Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Today, we're checking out the best VR games as of January 2023 and we'll be organizing them by genre so you can find exactly what you're looking for. I update this list twice a year and today we'll have titles from the PlayStation VR, PCVR, Quest 2, the Pico 4, and I'll also be including some flat to VR mods and games to look out for coming to the PlayStation VR 2. Everything is labeled including genre and platforms, and there are of course links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead. But before we jump in, this video is brought to you by my sponsor Kiwi Design. They carry accessories for all of your VR needs, from Quest to Elite straps, battery packs, upgradable controller straps, replacement facial inserts, cable management systems, and I'm very happy to announce their brand new all-in-one RGB stand. Your headset and controllers magnetically connect. There's plenty of options for the RGB lighting and an indicator that lets you know when your headset and controllers are fully charged. There's a link to Kiwi down in the description if you want to check out their products, and don't forget to use discount code Mateo311 for 5% off and to help support this channel. Okay, so first up, I want to hear your favorite game down in the description right now. And let's start this video off with story-driven VR experiences, and my clear favorite is the Lone Echo series. Taking place in humanity's future, what starts as a typical day on a space station deep in our solar system quickly takes a turn when a mysterious anomaly appears. The storyline just gets crazier and crazier from that point forward, and I don't want to spoil any of it, but I will say it's an unforgettable tale. This title also has some breathtaking graphics and an extremely high production value for a VR title. Lone Echo 2 offers the same greatness as the original game, but it's just better across the board. Now, another great storyline can be found in Iron Man VR. You can accuse it of being a little bit too predictable, but they did both Tony Stark and Iron Man justice in this VR game. The enemies are truly memorable. There's some definite standout moments and twists throughout the storyline, and you walk away from it truly feeling like the iconic hero. Now, if feelings is something you're looking for, you might want to check out Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Just be warned that those feelings are not warm and fuzzy. This game focuses on mental illness, specifically schizophrenia, and your character is haunted by voices, horrific images, and you're quite literally fighting demons. It's an overall trippy experience with some stunning graphics and truly emotional cutscenes. And on a similar but much lighter note, we have the time-traveling title Wanderer. Wanderer has you facing an alternate version of history, where the Russians made it to the moon first, and climate change has eventually destroyed the planet. The story's fed you through dramatic moments like traveling to the moon, visiting ancient cultures, becoming a rock star, or taking part in World War II. It's a lot to take in, but it's definitely a wild experience. Just like our next title, Farpoint. Once again, we're dealing with a little bit of time travel, but instead of Earth's history, you're going to be stuck on an alien world. Time dilation and surviving against all odds are the major concepts of the storyline, and it's a gripping tale filled with plenty of action. Now, if you're a Star Wars fan, I highly recommend the Vader Immortal series, as you'll get to meet Lord Vader himself up close and personal, learn more about the history of Mustafar, and engage in everything that makes Star Wars iconic, like wielding a lightsaber, using force powers, dealing with quirky droids, battling creatures like a Rancor, and eliminating lots of stormtroopers. Now, if you've already completed all of these titles, you should check out the flat to VR mods for both the Outer Wilds and Firewatch. Outer Wilds is a mysterious time loop on an alien planet, and Firewatch brings you back down to Earth with a semi-creepy tale of being isolated during Firewatch prevention in a national forest preservation. Now, if you're looking for upcoming games to check out, put the 1920s gangster series Peaky Blinders on your list, as this title will put you directly in the TV series and let you experience the real actors playing their iconic roles up close and personal. This one's for both fans of the show and those who like a good old-fashioned gangster storyline. And another title to keep an eye on is Horizon Call of the Mountain, coming to the PlayStation VR 2. We know this takes place in the Horizon Zero Dawn universe, and it's doubtful that such an iconic IP with one of the best sci-fi storylines would be lacking in the storytelling department. I'm hoping to see a little cameo from Aloy and maybe get a few new nuggets of information that the games have yet to reveal. But let's move into another very popular genre, the single-player shooter. Now, top of the list is obviously Half-Life Alyx, as it features stunning graphics, an excellent storyline, fantastic physics, high-quality mechanics, and plenty of unforgettable moments. Who can forget Jeff fleeing from a Strider, that final mission in the vault, and the game's ending? But not every title needs to be super high production value to be excellent, and that's why I still recommend Robo-Recall. It's just an absolute blast to play with amazing mechanics and a high level of replayability. You could rip enemies limb from limb and toss them around, catch bullets midair and throw them back, or use your own enemies' weapons against them. This game was originally released all the way back in 2017, and it's still one of the most mechanically sound VR shooters. But if you want something creepier, I highly recommend Resident Evil 4. The remake of this classic title absolutely shines. The storyline is quirky, but still fantastic. And there's some unmatched pacing and adrenaline-fueled action here. There's an obvious reason why they're still remaking this game 15 years after it originally released, and the VR version definitely does it justice. Now for the PlayStation VR, I once again have Farpoint on the list, as I thought it was an excellent shooter. But we've already spoken about this game, and everyone always tells me to mention Blood and Truth. Unfortunately, I am still yet to experience this game, but it's an adrenaline-fueled shooter, full of explosive action, and Hollywood-style blockbuster drama. Now that sounds like it's right up my alley, so I really need to find the time to play this game. Now once again, if you've played through all these games, I highly recommend you check out the flat to VR mods for both Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2. These are classic shooters that everyone should experience, and their VR mods are extremely high quality and feel like native games. Honestly, Half-Life 2 in VR is better than the majority of VR games that are releasing right now. Now a title to stay on the lookout for is Vertigo 2. I absolutely love the original. It's basically Half-Life meets Rick and Morty, and this is currently my most anticipated game for 2023, as the sequel appears to be bringing so much more to the table. Now if you're looking for a co-op shooter, an easy recommendation is After the Fall. There's multiple campaign missions designed for replayability, 4 distinct levels of difficulty, and plenty of unlockable weapons and cosmetics. When you're bored of the campaign, there's a never-ending horde mode, and you could even jump into some PvP. After the Fall is an all-around excellent title, but if you're looking for a bit more variety in your campaign, check out Zero Caliber. This is an arcadey military-themed shooter with a lot of replayability and plenty of unlockables. Having the ability to play the campaign in co-op is just a nice added bonus. Now in terms of flat to VR mods, Deep Rock Galactic is absolutely fantastic. There's just so much content and replayability here, and they've done an excellent job of implementing motion controls. Now some games to keep a lookout for are Ghostbusters VR Rise of the Ghost Lord, which should give us a 4-person co-op experience similar to After the Fall, but it'll be more lighthearted with a greater emphasis on the campaign storyline and strategic combat. Another co-op title that I'm highly looking forward to is Crossfire Sierra Squad on the PlayStation VR 2. This looks like a high adrenaline shooter with an emphasis on action. But if you like competition, the PvP shooter genre is absolutely stacked. There's Pavlov for the Counter-Strike fans, plus there's a huge range of mods, so this game never really gets old. Onward is a more realistic military sim, so if you want something that's highly competitive and unforgiving, that's your game. Hyperdash is for the sci-fi arena shooter fans, and it emphasizes fast movement, weapon pickups, and strategic combat, and its wide array of different game modes. Population 1 is for all the Battle Royale fans, and they've just recently introduced a new Sandbox mode, so there's a ton of new player-made deathmatch content to be found in this game. And finally, there's Contractors and Alvo, which do an excellent job of scratching the Call of Duty itch. Some special attention has to go to Contractors though, because they have a huge array of absolutely fantastic mods, which recreate games like Halo and Star Wars Battlefront. Now if you're looking for a hero shooter, the title X8 is coming out in the near future, and it looks like they're making sure to emphasize motion controls, but if you prefer more of a military sim, there's Firewall Ultra, a sequel to one of PlayStation VR's most beloved VR shooters. And for the Rainbow Six Siege fans, you should go check out Breachers from the same studio that gave us Hyperdash. It's currently in an open alpha, but already delivers some excellent gadget-filled, breaching-based combat. Now, if you prefer your PvP to be a bit more intimate, there are some excellent 1v1 games. For shooters, we have Blast On, which has you creating your own arsenal, dodging projectiles, and grabbing weapons out of the air, which need to be strategically utilized against your enemy. It's extremely competitive and a bit of a workout at the same time. Now, if you prefer hand-to-hand combat, we have Broken Edge. Broken Edge is a unique new take on melee fighting, and it requires you to power up your weapon and shatter your enemy's sword. It ends up becoming a unique combination of fencing with different historical fighters, and it also has a really sleek art style. Now, if you enjoy something like Rocket League, you have to check out Ultimax. It's basically the same thing. You're controlling robots with special powers. You can use your rocket-powered fist to score goals or beat up your opponent. It's an excellent title for the low price of free, and it's available in both 1v1 and 2v2 modes. Now next up is my favorite genre, the single-player RPGs. Still at the top is an oldie but a goodie, and that's Asgard's Wrath. It features an extremely lengthy campaign where you switch between god form and multiple different mortal warriors. You'll also get a large array of pets with special abilities, and this title storyline has you getting up close and personal with the Norse pantheon, and they truly know how to use VR to make the overall storyline more immersive. And the final cherry on top is the fact that this game is stunningly beautiful. Now you can't talk about VR RPGs without mentioning Skyrim. Now overall, Skyrim is a fantastic game, and its VR port is pretty good, but you could really take it to the next level with a huge array of different mods. Both magic and melee combat have been reworked, there's full collision systems, voice controls, and of course huge graphical updates. Now, if that sounds like a bit too much for you, a much lighter RPG is Rune's Magus. There's a lengthy campaign, a cute storyline, excellent Zelda-like graphics, and plenty of fun combat. I would have liked to have seen a bit more variety in this title and more depth in the upgrade system, but it's really good for what it is. Now, another truly unique single-player RPG that's worth checking out is Arc Axer. It's extremely lengthy, has a huge upgrade system, a quirky storyline, and truly unique mechanics that combines both VR motion controls and turn-based action. It's definitely worth looking into, and not quite like anything else out there. Now, if you want to bring some friends along for your RPG experience, I absolutely recommend Legendary Tales. It's a 4-person dungeon crawler currently in early access, but it features absolutely amazing physics-based combat, a fantastic character building system that rewards you for playing the way you want, and even in its current early access state, with a huge update still on the way, there's plenty of hours of fun to be had. Speaking of fun, Carnage Chronicles is definitely worth checking out. This is another 4-person co-op RPG, which is a bit light on RPG mechanics, but has an excellent storyline, a wide array of different characters to dispatch, and an excellent combat system that plays quite differently if you're in single player or co-op modes. In single player, the combat is more refined, and you'll need more precise blocks and counters, but once you get into co-op, it starts to feel like a hack and slash. It's a lot of fun either way, and this is a great looking title. Now, not exactly an RPG, but any tabletop fan has to play Demeo. You and 6 of your buddies get to select from 6 distinct characters and battle across 5 extremely challenging adventures. There's cosmetic unlockables, a hangout room for you and your friends, and you can even paint some minis. The updates aren't done though, as a PvP mode is coming in the near future. Now, in terms of flat to VR mods, you might want to check out Valheim, which is a bit more of an open world survival title, but there are some RPG components. Experiencing this game in VR gives you a whole new perspective, and a title you should look out for in the near future is Everslot Invasion. Now, this is a roguelite with RPG mechanics currently available on PCVR in early access, but it's coming to the Quest with a co-op mode. This game is like Diablo meets Doom with some pretty intense action. I hope it comes close to matching the PCVR experience because I absolutely love this game the way it is right now. Now, there's not many choices when it comes to the MMO genre, but first up we have Zenith. There's a huge world to explore, a high emphasis on flight mechanics, a cooking system, and they've recently introduced pets and full body tracking. It's the type of game that you either love it or hate it, as the combat's not for everyone and it is grindy, but if you're looking for a VR MMO, there's really nothing else out there. Now, if you don't need the full MMO experience, I recommend the Township Tale. It has some of those MMO mechanics, but you won't be interacting with a massive number of players in game. The mechanics feel more suited to VR though. There's a large emphasis on crafting and resource gathering, and you could sink a huge amount of hours into this title. Now, if neither of these games are for you, keep an eye out for Elysia. This gave me some old school EverQuest feels, and has mechanics and VR controls that feel much more satisfying than the other 2 titles, but this game's still in development and not publicly available. Now, probably the simplest and first genre for VR was the wave shooter. This is just some good old-fashioned fun, and I highly recommend Mother Gunship Forge if you're looking for a bit more out of your wave shooter. It adds roguelike components and some absolutely crazy gun building mechanics with a touch of bullet hell. There'll be tons of enemies and projectiles on screen at all times, and some really epic boss fights. Now, if that sounds a bit too overwhelming, I highly recommend Space Pirate Trainer. Surprisingly strategic combat, excellent VR mechanics, a jumping soundtrack, and just a blast to play. Shooting down wave after wave of enemy drones just never gets old. And if you're looking for something a bit more unique, I recommend Superhot or Swarm. Superhot's almost like a puzzle where you have to strategically take down enemies with limited resources, and they only move when you move, which is a really cool mechanic. And Swarm is like Spider-Man with guns. Super fast paced, you'll be swinging around like a crazy person, picking up some amazing weapons, and then battling a ton of different enemies. It's truly challenging and an absolute blast to play. Now, if you prefer to take a seat, there are some great VR platformers out there. First up is Trover Saves the Universe, which is mechanically solid, has excellent graphics, and a really wacky Rick and Morty style storyline. So if you enjoy crude humor and excessive vulgarity, I highly recommend you check out this game. But if you prefer something that pulls on your heartstrings, Moss Book 1 and Book 2 are an absolute must. I never expected a puzzle-filled platformer with a mouse protagonist to be so absolutely amazing. The environments are highly immersive, you'll truly feel like you form a bond with Quill by the end of the adventure, and the storyline is truly powerful. But probably one of the best VR platformers still remains Astrobot Rescue Mission. Besides being mechanically sound, the developers knew how to utilize VR to its fullest potential. You'll dive underwater, creatures will get up close to your face and you'll have to physically dodge, and just every single aspect of this title shines. signs. I wish I could say Astrobot Rescue Mission 2 is on the way, but unfortunately that's not the case, at least just yet. Now our next category is open world games, which is once again a lacking genre for VR. The obvious first choice is No Man's Sky, which has its nearly limitless amount of planets to visit and a huge array of different tasks for you to focus on. Even if you don't play the game's campaign, there's still plenty of hours of fun to be had here. The developers have released an insane amount of updates, so now you can build bases, explore the stars, manufacture mechs, or just discover some secrets. It's definitely one of the largest games available in VR, and that's obviously because of its flat screen roots, just like our next title, Elite Dangerous. One of the first flat screen games to fully support VR, this is a highly complex and extremely immersive title that can basically take over your life. It's hard to keep this title in just one category because it is massively multiplayer, it's basically a space sim, and there are RPG components. However you end up categorizing it, it'll still have intense space battles, tons of gameplay, and an insanely huge open world to explore. Now the Quest 2 is lacking when it comes to open world titles, so I'll just once again mention Zenith, which can be really fun if you just like to fly around and explore, and the mod Valheim, which I previously mentioned, is another great open world experience. But we could also add Subnautica Below Zero onto that list, diving deep into the ocean, and it's crazy experiencing alien creatures up close and personal, especially in VR. If you're not familiar with the game, it's a survival title, so there's plenty of resource gathering, building, and replayability here. But let's move into Sandbox games. The new kid on the block is Bone Lab, and that's taking the place of their previous title Boneworks, but it's still worth checking out though. Bone Lab features a full physics system, and excellent ranged and melee combat. There's a wide variety of gameplay modes, including things like parkour and tactical shootouts, but you could also load into some worlds, spawn items, and make your own fun. They've introduced a new character system, which allows you to change your physical attributes on the fly, and it definitely augments the overall gaming experience. Now, if you prefer more of a focus on combat, I recommend Blade and Sorcery. While it's mostly an arena fighter, there are some new gameplay modes, and it's the type of title where you make your own fun. Load up the weapons you want to use, select the perfect enemies, and then go to Murder Town. There's an excellent array of magical abilities, the physics-based combat is solid, and when you get bored, the list of mods available is absolutely insane, which adds things like Marvel characters and lightsabers. Now, Dreams is a great title to check out for the PlayStation VR, as it allows you to create your own content, and there's a huge array of user-generated stuff. So this game obviously has more of an emphasis on building rather than battling, but there's definitely a lot of fun to be had here, and you can experience some truly unique stuff. And on a similar note, thanks to their new update, I'm adding Population 1 to this list. Their sandbox mode is absolutely amazing, and makes it extremely easy to build new levels. I've checked out space stations, toilet paper-filled worlds, and even an exotic forest. You can create hangout spaces, parkour worlds, or full team deathmatch maps. So if you're interested in building, I highly recommend this game, or you haven't thrown on Population 1 in a while, go check out this free update. Now, rhythm games is a genre that VR is known for, and the obvious first choice is Beat Saber. With a huge selection of both unique and licensed songs, there is definitely something for everyone, and it's undeniably fun for everyone from noob to expert plus. The challenge level will be exactly what you want, and if you enjoy competition, there is a multiplayer mode. But who knew that a game about slicing blocks with lightsabers could be so much fun? Now, if you prefer some John Wick style action, you have to check out Pistol Whip. It's a little bit harder to get into the rhythm of this title, but it's a fun shooter experience that'll have you moving around. They've added story campaigns that'll take you to the distant future or back to the Wild West, and the overall mechanics of this game just suck you right in. If you prefer a rhythm title that gets you dancing a bit more, well then I recommend Synth Riders. They also have an excellent collection of both unique and licensed songs, and they also have these special VR experiences that are quite mind-blowing. They are tailor-made levels that almost feel like you're going on a psychedelic journey. So if you're looking for a high level of immersion, this is a fantastic rhythm game. Now, if you want something with a bit more mature theme and blends everything together, we have Against. This has you slicing, shooting, performing some parkour maneuvers, and battling sci-fi creatures. Its violence and darker theme definitely appeals to me, so I get to feel a bit more manly, and not like I'm just playing some silly rhythm game. And obviously I'm joking here, but it is a bit more my style. Okay, so next up is puzzle games. If you're looking for a highly detailed world with a deep storyline and some extreme challenges, we have Wanderer. But I previously spoke about this game in the story-driven section, so I won't spend that much time here. It's a time-traveling journey that feels like an interconnected series of escape rooms, and it'll definitely have you scratching your head at times. On a similar note, we have Red Matter 2, featuring some of the best graphics to ever come to the Quest 2, a truly intriguing storyline, some highly balanced puzzles that are both challenging but not frustrating, and there's even some combat thrown in there. If you played the original game and thought it wasn't for you, I still recommend you check out the second one, as the game was designed for more of a mainstream audience. Now, puzzle games aren't my genre of choice, so I have to throw out a lot of honorable mentions here, because I haven't experienced the majority of these games. The first is Myst, a remake of a classic title that has you exploring a mysterious island. Obviously, it's full of puzzles and a deep storyline to uncover. The next title is the Room VR, A Dark Matter, which takes place in 1908 London, where you're investigating the disappearance of an esteemed Egyptologist. The puzzles will have you working with strange contraptions and entering an otherworldly space that blurs the line between reality and illusion. Now, everyone I know who's played this game speaks very highly of it, and if you're apprehensive because it looks a bit spooky, you don't have to worry about it. There's no jump scares, just a semi-creepy atmosphere. But if you still need something with a lighter theme, there's The Last Clockwinder. This mission to repair an ancient clock tower has you using a series of animation looped clones. They'll become an interconnected system capable of completing any tasks, or rather any of the clever puzzles this game throws at you. Now, something a lot of people aren't looking for is horror titles, but VR has plenty of them. First on the list is Into the Radius, which places you in a dystopian world filled with shadow-like monstrosities. You'll set out on separate missions, scavenge for gear, maintain your equipment, and keep an eye out for special artifacts. The overall tone of this game is extremely creepy, and its deep storyline will be drip-fed to you. Now, a similar title is The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. And last year, I actually kept it out of this category because it doesn't feel like a straight horror game, but I've reconsidered and it's definitely spooky enough to make it here. So brutal combat, a great storyline, and a super spooky atmosphere put it at the top of the list. Now, even creepier for the PlayStation VR is Resident Evil 7. If you ever wanted to experience what it's like to get trapped in a house with a family of psychotic individuals, well, here's your opportunity. This is the early days of PlayStation VR titles, where Sony really liked to get up in your face and show off VR technology. It's incredible, but not for the squeamish. And on the same note is Phasmophobia. This 4-person co-op ghost hunting title is super creepy, but at least you get to share that experience with your friends. I've had so much fun playing this game in VR and found it to be equal parts laughter and screaming. It really makes you feel like you're in an episode of Ghost Hunters or filming something like The Blair Witch. Now, if you want your horror titles to be more story-driven, we have Lies Beneath. It's an excellent combination of gory comic book style art, immersive environments, and creepy sound effects. Now, some of the tension is cut by the fact that you will be murdering a lot of these creatures along the way, but anytime you run into a larger enemy, you're gonna pee your pants a bit. But if you like that style of gameplay and want to crank the graphics and horror up to 11, you have to check out the Alien Isolation Mother mod. It's basically the best VR horror experience you can get, unless you want to check out the mods for Resident Evil 2, 3, 7, and 8. Now, an honorable mention goes to the horror-themed Rogue-lite, Cosmodread, which has you exploring a derelict space station. This is another title that I'm yet to personally get to, but everyone always recommends it, so I had to put it on the list. And finally, an obvious game to look out for is Resident Evil Village coming to the PlayStation VR 2. This will no doubt be extremely terrifying in VR, and easily one of the best horror games for 2023. Now, if you've survived your way through horror titles, you've made it to the survival genre. Green Hell features a 15+ hour campaign, fantastic graphics, and drops you off in the middle of the Amazon, where you'll promptly die from some random thing. In only a few hours, I've fallen off a cliff, been poisoned to death, starved to death, and most likely cannibalized, but I can't confirm that because I don't know what they did with my body. Now, if you're looking for a survival title that's maybe a little bit kinder, we have Song in the Smoke. Once again, you'll be crafting materials, foraging for foods, and hunting animals. But the world of Song in the Smoke is a little bit more fantasy-oriented than what you get from Green Hell. But if you like your survival titles to be as creepy as possible, we have The Forest. Crash on an island full of mutant creatures, and watch them make off with your child. Survival will take precedence though, as you'll have to hunt animals, build shelter, and eventually create weapons and traps to keep those mutants at bay. You could also play this game in co-op mode if you find it a bit too scary. Either way, you can't go wrong, and if you still need some more survival action, I recommend the VR mod for Subnautica Below Zero. This will take your survival experience to a whole new sci-fi level as you dive deep into the ocean of an alien planet. There's a lot to see and craft in this game, so you most likely won't want to miss it. Now, if you prefer constant death, we have the roguelite genre. Now, my favorite title remains Until You Fall, due to its fantastic combat mechanics, excellent graphics, and just absolutely addictive gameplay. It's a bit too physically intense to keep you playing for hours on end, but it's amazing to jump in for an hour or two, or if you're looking to break a sweat. If you prefer your roguelites to have a horror theme, then I definitely recommend In Death Unchained on the Oculus Quest. It can be brutally difficult and outright creepy at times, but it's also extremely rewarding and pretty damn addictive. Now, the persistence cranks the creepiness factor up to 11 and throws you into a derelict space station where the cloning machines have started churning out some grotesque monsters. There's plenty of risk versus reward in this title, increasing the overall anxiety even more, and it's just brutally violent, which is so much fun in VR. But if you want to tone things down and keep it cute, we have Ancient Dungeon. This roguelite dungeon crawler features physics-based combat, procedurally generated layouts, and over 20 hours of content. At first glance, you might think it's Minecraft, but it's actually an ever-shifting labyrinth filled with terrors and over 125 relics to collect. Now, a new roguelite to keep an eye out for is the Light Brigade. This is a shooter with realistic gunplay and magical light-based abilities. Over time, you'll unlock new weapons, classes, and abilities, which you'll have to use against the forces of darkness and return light to this world. Now, if you were looking for an arena fighter, we have plenty of great options that all just come down to your personal preference. Gorn is filled with some very cartoony slapstick action, but still brutally violent. It's a lot of fun to smash the enemy's head clean off its body, and all the blood spewing out never gets old. But if you wanted something much more mature, I recommend Hellsplit Arena. Hellsplit takes place in a dark fantasy world where you're fighting an array of different creatures with multiple physics-based weapons, making it the only VR game I can think of where you can run down skeletons while on horseback. And finally, we have Swordsman VR, which is now available on all platforms. Swordsman VR stands in the middle of the previous two titles, as it's not quite as creepy as Hellsplit Arena, and definitely not cartoony like Gorn. There's a cool mini RPG system where you can level up certain stats, and a wide array of different class-based armor and weapons to choose from. They've also added some really cool DLC over time, like taking down a ship full of pirates. Now, if you just want some party games to play with your friends, VR has plenty of those also. First up is the extremely unique title Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. One or multiple people will get a list of instructions and will play outside of VR, just feeding information to the VR user who's trying to explain what they see on the bomb itself. It usually devolves into people getting confused and yelling at each other, which is always a great time. Now, my personal favorite party game is Takeling's House Party, which allows up to 8 people to join in from their cell phones and take on the role of small creatures called Takelings, who are battling a human-sized opponent who's currently in the VR setup. It's an absolutely hilarious experience, and it's a VR title that deserves much more love. Now, a party-style game that you can play online is Among Us VR. This is the ultimate tale of deception, where the majority of players are trying to fix their space station, but at least one amongst you is an imposter who's trying to literally backstab everyone. Hilarity ensues as you all argue over who the imposter is, and this game is absolutely fantastic to play with your friends. Now, if betraying your friends is not exactly your style, and you just want to get engrossed in a real-time strategy game, I highly recommend Battle Group VR. Battle Group features a full single-player campaign, online multiplayer modes, and the ability to control a whole fleet of ships with a huge amount of customization that even goes down to the pilot's special abilities. On top of that, it has some amazing graphics, which allow you to experience the game from inside a cockpit or outside floating in the vastness of space. If you prefer to stay grounded, we have the tiny green army man controlling title, Final Assault. It's a rather simplistic RTS, which has you pushing characters down multiple lanes, and the victory really comes down to some micromanagement and properly placing your characters. But if you're looking for the most amount of variety in an RTS, you have to check out Guardians, which is like jumping into the world of Starship Troopers, and it's almost like an RTS Tower Defense hybrid. The developers have added tons of content over time, there's even controllable vehicles now, and there's just a surprising amount of different things you can do in this title. It's also co-op if you're not looking to compete against anyone else. But for the competitive among us who are looking for sports games, we have the undisputed champ Walkabout Mini Golf. Walkabout Mini Golf does an excellent job of simulating how much I suck at mini golf in real life, but now I get to do it on super extravagant courses with my friends from around the world. It's an amazingly chill experience, and even though I stink at it, I still really enjoy it. If you're a table tennis fan, then you most likely already own 11 Table Tennis, but that's another phenomenally well done simulation. It's just amazing at how realistic this game actually feels. And on that note, we also have Gym Class. If you're looking for a simulation of a game of hoops, here it is. There's been a lot of emphasis placed on realistic physics, and this game recently raised a lot of extra money, so you can expect it to expand in the near future. And while we're on the topic of Sims, we're really moving into a genre I'm not qualified to speak on. Now, this is a category that people insist that I add, but when it comes to simulation games, the closest I play is Star Wars Squadrons and Elite Dangerous. So if you ever wanted to experience what it's like to be a starfighter in the Star Wars universe, Star Wars Squadrons is an easy recommendation, or you wanted to jump into a complex, gigantic spacefaring world, well, look no further than Elite Dangerous. But if we're talking about more realistic sims, well, I'm at a loss. Now, the obvious recommendation is Microsoft Flight Simulator, which I know is definitely true to life, so that means people will either find it extremely boring or absolutely amazing. Now, a more action-oriented sim is War Thunder, which people always recommend to me, but I have extremely limited experience with this one, and all I basically know is it features some realistic World War I and World War II style aerial combat. I constantly hear that the VR mode is pretty broken or doesn't run well, but I can't actually verify that. Now, the one simulation title that I have spent multiple hours in and I do recommend is VTOL. For some it's a bit arcadey, but for me it was a perfect balance of true to life and just fun to play. Just getting your plane off the ground can be truly exciting, and then the action truly cranks up when you finally get into some firefight. Now let's move into another genre that I don't play too much of, and that's racing games. First on this list, I'm going to include the brand new title Grid Legends. While I have recently made fun of the graphics of this game and knocked it for not including motion controls, it's still an overall pretty solid racing game. Now, I would definitely recommend you play it on either flat screen or a console rather than in the Quest, but some people only have a Quest 2, so if you're dying for a racing game, here you go, because you really don't have many other options. For PC, I'm just going to rattle off a few that people usually recommend, but I'm not familiar with them. The first is Assetto Corsa, followed by Project Cars 2, and Dirt Rally. Now, these titles all have their own personal theme and different levels of realism, so you just need to find the one that suits you best. But if you prefer something like Mario Kart, there's Dash Dash World, which is basically the same thing and also has plenty of single-player content. I'm not sure how populated the servers are anymore, but it's a really fun game nonetheless. And the obvious upcoming racing game to keep an eye out for is Gran Turismo 7. This highly successful series has been around forever, and Gran Turismo 7 is currently available on the PlayStation 5, featuring stunning graphics and highly realistic driving mechanics. Okay, let's move into our final category, social games. If you want to hang out, meet people, explore new worlds, well then an excellent choice is Rec Room. Don't let the childish graphics fool you, there's fun for everyone here. You can play laser tag, paintball, race some cars, jump into quests, or just check out some user-generated content. Rec Room has become one of the biggest VR games, mainly because it's a lot of fun to play. Now, if you want a title that pushes deeper into the social aspects, we have VR Chat. There's a huge array of in-game avatars that you could use to help better represent yourself. There's other features like eye and full body tracking, and some people are basically living their lives inside of this game. If you don't believe me, go check out the documentary from HBO called We Met in Virtual Reality. And finally, we have Neos VR, which is very similar to VR Chat, but a lot more feature-rich. It allows users to create some of the craziest stuff I've ever seen. I've been strapped to a rocket and shot up into the air. I have a gun that violently shoots sound waves, and I really never know what to expect from this title. But that was my full list, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, I'm sure I missed some of your favorites, so let me know what they are down in the comments right now. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe. This thing took me absolutely forever. I don't know if I'm just getting older slow or these videos are getting longer and longer. Either way, I truly hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys on next time.